Welcome to Hot Copper's Wiser Wealth. I'm John Davidson. If you're watching this, you're probably familiar with the ASX and investing in general. You count The Big Short among your favourite movies. You've heard all about Warren Buffett. You might have flipped through The Barefoot Investor. You've probably learned to get nervous when you hear the phrase capital raise. Maybe you've even read the original Wolf of Wall Street book. In other words, you're a Hot Copper user, one of millions, and that's a beautiful thing. But because I work here, I'm getting a bit tired of talking about all of that. So I decided to go opening backroom doors regardless of whether I was allowed in there or not. I forced my way into boardrooms and I set my own coffee mug down at the stockbrokers' Bloomberg terminals to get a better idea of all the other worlds of finance connected to capital markets. And we're going to start with private equity this week. Why? Because I've been asking myself a question lately. What the hell is private equity? Private equity has been coming up a lot in early 2026, mostly because the industry has been stuck in a bit of a dry spot for the last few years. When stimulus checks were flowing in 2021 and the markets went crazy due to everybody sitting at home trading, private equity firms had their best collective year ever. Then interest rates started going up. The era of free money or cheap money was over, and it became harder for private equity firms to sell their investments, whether they were companies or highways. For that reason, there's a lot of private equity firms around the world right now with investments that they are unable to sell, or, to use private equity parlance, exit, which underscores how higher interest rates have hurt the sector. But that doesn't answer our question. What is private equity? Well, it's a pretty diverse world and too big to go into here, but in essence, the general or traditional idea is that you've got a company that's either struggling or about to go huge. The idea behind private equity is that a firm gets money from private investors, buys the struggling or budding companies it wants, and aims to sell them off a few years later or through an IPO. Theoretically, if done right and the timing and the acumen and, let's be honest, the luck all come together, this is how investors in private equity make their money back. The investors who put money into these private firms are paid what's called distributions. And so in that way, the basics aren't too different to income investing. It's not that different from investing long-term in a dividend-paying stock, intending only to take the dividends. But private equity isn't just about investing in any old company that buys other companies. There are private equity firms that are specialised. For instance, you have some for infrastructure, for renewable energy assets, AI, tech, data centres, obviously, while other firms focus exclusively on startups, where it really starts to look a bit more like a venture capital. Private credit too can blend in, and that's not the same as private equity, because for something to be private credit, there needs to be a loan involved. But it's the same basic idea of privately investing into an agreement with future returns on the table. For private credit, there is perhaps a simpler term one could use, non-bank lending. But we can go further into that in a different video. With 2026 promising to be another interesting year, both at home in Australia and overseas, we've heard at this year's Davos conference that the wheel of private equity is spinning again, and we could see the industry pick up pace this year. Of course, that was the president of a private equity firm saying that, so you're welcome to take that statement with a grain of salt. That's as simple as we can make it without giving you homework. Here at Hot Copper, we make a complicated market simple with our Wiser Wealth series, because that's all it needs to be, and these things usually aren't as complicated as they seem. But you don't know that until someone says it straight.